Good afternoon. Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network. This is RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Of course, we are standing by for that 1 o'clock press conference with Karoline Leavitt. Looking forward to that. So glad you're already on the line with us here, watching on various platforms out there as more and more people, of course, arrive to watch the press conference that'll be happening a bit later today. And speaking of later today, at 4 p.m., President Trump will sign an executive order. This is all regarding fitness. He'll be hosting professional athletes for a new order expanding on a presidential sports council. So we'll hear all about that a bit later. That coverage starts at 3:30 Eastern, but that's 3.5 hours away. So we have a lot to get to over the next hour. We have a number of great guests that will join us here on Right Side, and we'll always go over the latest news as well. Before we get to our first interview, where Robert McNeely interviewed Ashley Brassfield with the Daily Caller. Meantime, at this hour, we're monitoring any new developments from Senator Chuck Grassley's office and others as he is making his rounds in the media, speaking about declassified documents from the Durham report that are being released. Simply put, the evidence and receipts from James Comey's FBI back in 2016 and the FBI's alleged cover-up and assistance with Obama, Clinton, and others to subvert the will of the American people and to stop Trump, aka seditious conspiracy. So this is the same case that the Department of National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard spoke about last week regarding its reporting to the DOJ and the FBI about Obama and the gang's alleged involvement in the Russia hoax. We're also monitoring any development from the DOJ regarding the Epstein case. So we'll bring you the latest as we get it right here on Right Side. In the meantime, shifting gears, thanks to President Trump, we now know there is no tax, of course, on overtime and no tax on tips. But let's also dive into the specifics about the deductions for senior citizens as well. Now, according to the IRS, deduction for seniors, the new deduction, effective for 2025 through 2028, individuals who are age 65 and older may claim an additional deduction of $6,000. This new deduction is in addition to the current additional standard deduction for seniors under existing law. So the $6,000 senior deduction is per eligible individual. For example, it's $12,000 total for a married couple where both spouses qualify. The IRS says deduction phases out for taxpayers with modified adjusted gross income more than $75,000. So for qualifying taxpayers, to qualify for the additional deduction, a taxpayer must attain age 65 on or before the last day of the taxable year. And taxpayer eligibility is pretty specific here. It just simply says deduction is available for both itemizing and non-itemizing taxpayers. So if you're just starting to listen in on that and you want to know more about the situation with taxes and seniors, well, all you do is hit pause and scrub back a little bit on this broadcast. Also, you can watch it on replay after the broadcast ends as we get ready to watch Karoline Leavitt at the podium in about 57 minutes from now. Sometimes it's a little bit later than that, but of course there's a lot going on in the 24/7 news cycle. We'll get to some of President Trump's posts as well on Truth Social, as he is posting like usual. I mean, on average, I would think 10 to 15 per day, which is great because you're knowing exactly what he's saying, what he's doing, and what he's going to do. So that's what we get with Truth Social. That's what we get in this information age that we are in. As I was posting yesterday a little bit, and I didn't know if I wanted to keep it up there, but it's the AI robotics age that we are entering in, whether we like that or not. I mean, that's what people are starting to do and have robots at their houses and that kind of thing. It's a very slow, early stages of all of this. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, but it's definitely an AI robotics age that we're seeing now start. This on the heels of the ending of the information age, because we're already complete. We already get all the information very quickly now in lightning speed. So it's interesting to see all of those developments. In the meantime, let's go to a couple sponsors before we go to our first interview. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, a great sponsor here at Right Side. Medical freedom, it starts with access, and that's exactly what All Family Pharmacy delivers. They're changing the way people get their medications. So no insurance, no red tape, just fast, reliable care shipped straight to your door. Because getting the treatments you need shouldn't be complicated. So All Family Pharmacy makes it simple in just 3 easy steps. Check this out. All you have to do is select the medications that you want online. A licensed doctor will review your order and writes that prescription. From there, the third step, your medications are shipped directly to your door. Pretty easy stuff there. They carry the essentials like NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, and more than 200 more medications. And yes, every order includes the doctor's prescription. So you can take control of your health with a pharmacy that actually works for you here. This is allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use that RSBN10 promo code to save 10%. Let's also go to callshe.com/RSBN if you're looking to bet, trade, or check out various polls out there about all sorts of topics. As soon as you go to callshe.com, you can just start scrolling through and looking at all the topics that people are polling on, betting, trading, all sorts of stuff. Callshe.com, more than 1 million users on it. You can use that QR code if you'd like, or get the app, callshe.com, a great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, as we await our few interviews that we have coming up, and then also Karoline Leavitt will be speaking, of course, around 1 o'clock for that press conference. We have a lot of news to get into today. In the meantime, other news happening out there, all specifically probably correlated with all of what we're talking about today as well, as Robert McNeely interviewed the Daily Caller's Ashley Brassfield within the 24/7 news cycle. Here's that interview.
Welcome back to RSBN Live Desk. Ashley Brassfield, the Hill correspondent at the Daily Caller. What a Scotland trip it was for President Trump. Ashley, let's break it down. $600 billion for the United States. This was to bring down that reciprocal trade with our transatlantic partners, because even the European Union president mentioned that the United States was being taken advantage of. Also, $750 billion for energy, trade, and discussion forthcoming, but also a great job with transatlantic security. I mean, President Trump has an amazing way of getting these deals done.
Absolutely. You know, this is one of his strong points. I would say a lot of foreign policy on President Trump, the Democrats have never been able to hit him, especially during his first term. But, you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, the EU was calling Trump daddy in this instance, and, you know, kind of gave him a spanking. And like you said, you know, they admitted they needed to kind of, you know, give us a good trade deal on their end. So, you know, that's exactly what we got. And I can't think of, you know, someone that would be better at negotiating than President Trump in this instance. And this is exactly what he's talking about, you know, getting America first back to where it needs to be, and not getting taken advantage on the world stage.
And what's amazing about it, too, is, of course, it's an international trip, but meeting with Ursula de der Leyen, the European Union president, also Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, also the First Minister of Scotland. And it seemed that the Scottish people absolutely love Donald Trump. They were lined up for the landing at the Glasgow International Airport with Air Force One. They were lined up amongst the rolling highlands to see the presidential motorcade. And we know that that Scottish freedom movement still very strong, and still some voices, although referendum has not been for nearly a decade now, calling for Scottish independence. But how do you see this all working out between the United Kingdom and the United States? Because you have two great nations and two ideologies somewhat separate right now, but they seem to really come together on trade. And the thing that really struck me, Ashley, the fact that President Trump is on foreign soil, but he's taking Prime Minister Starmer by Air Force One from Turnberry to Aberdeen, also Marine One, and to his own properties at Turnberry and Aberdeen, mind you.
Right. Well, I think that's just truly Trump optics right there. You know, him coming and you know, welcoming Keir Starmer at his own property in Keir Starmer's own country. Right. That's true Trump optics right there, I would say. And so, you know, as far as, you know, the trade deal between, you know, the United Kingdom, you know, I will say the left leaning Keir Starmer has even spoken out on things like the migration and illegal or immigration that has occurred within the United Kingdom, specifically. So in recent years. And, you know, I think they've honestly taken a note from what's happened in America, in the United States, with left-leaning Democrats that have not continued to help, you know, just shut the border down and see our own country be safe from illegal immigrants, the free flow that has occurred coming into this country. I think they're taking a note out of our America's book, and they realized that they cannot continue to do that. And he has stood up saying that we must stop this problem in the UK. And to see the results of that yet, we are waiting on that. But I think they did take a note out of our own book with that when it comes to Democrats in America. But as far as, the optics with President Trump going to foreign leaders, very different from the Biden administration, obviously. So very interesting trip. I know Jackie Heinrich, I saw her as a Fox correspondent, was on the trip, and she said that, that's one of her favorite countries to visit on her job as well. But we have close relations with that country. So I do think it is an important one, and that the president has shown up, and I think he will be meeting even with the royal family in coming months as well.
Our constitutional republic, in fact, born out of that English common law and the great freedom fighters dating back to the 13th century and even beforehand, with William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, just to name a few. And this does actually, as you mentioned, changes geopolitical structures on global trade, on international security. I'm sure the Chinese Communist Party watching as President Trump was on the phone with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on his way back from Scotland to Washington, D.C., but also this oil and gas and energy movement that we've seen really being pushed by the administration post the ending of the 12-day war. So you had the Biden administration, the auto pen, cancel the Keystone Pipeline, and another socialist-leaning, in fact, I call him a communist, the former Prime Minister of Canada, or former Governor of Canada, if you will, even wanted all those Canadian jobs saved and begged President Biden to reestablish that Keystone Pipeline at the same time that Russian pipeline was given the A-OK. And Germany always complained that, we don't have sovereignty here in Germany. The European Union's in trouble because we're dependent upon Russian oil and gas. And my thought was, why are you purchasing it from them? So this new deal completely eliminates that.
Exactly. Well, I think this is one thing that was even discussed during the Big Beautiful Bill when it was being passed within the Senate, and it's this green energy tax credits. But I think the Trump administration has been very staunch on their stance that they want, American energy, oil and gas, fracking. Specifically, we saw this in Pennsylvania being a huge issue on the campaign trail back in the fall during the 2024 election as well. But this is one of the points that the administration has stood very firm on, that they do not want these green energy tax credits that came from the Biden administration, like you said, with auto pen signings, with executive orders, and even in the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022 that allowed many of these credits to go through. But they've been very staunch that they want this to be America first, American energy from our own soil so we can be self-reliant. And that's one of the things that was debated in the Senate with allowing some of these green energy credits, and many lobbying groups lobbying for this. We saw this up in the very few days leading up to the bill being passed, that this was being debated. Of course, these did not end up coming through. It's people like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, multiple others debating this. But also there was the debate as well as jobs being lost due to that. But also the Trump administration stating that many of these jobs will be made up due to the ramping up of in certain sectors like oil and gas, like, natural gas fracking and other areas. So I do think there is a balance with that. And I think that President Trump's trying to make the United States a model for that, for other countries to become self-reliant.
And this should work out well for the Scottish people, because President Trump stating on that trip that Aberdeen is actually the oil and gas capital, arguably, yes, for Europe. So that could also help get some of that reliance off of Russia. Now, in turn, on Capitol Hill, bringing it back stateside, is there any hesitation from any congressman on either side of the aisle regarding the fact that President Trump made available those Patriot missiles? It's after many phone calls with Vladimir Putin. He stated it once again in another interview while at Turnberry that we have great conversations with the Russian leadership, but then he goes and fires missiles, and more often than not, they hit civilian locations like nursing homes where people are unable to even escape, or they cannot get out without prior warning, especially in a situation like that when many people are homebound. Do you find that Congress is okay with the fact that EU and through Europe and NATO purchasing those Patriot missiles, or does there seem to be some reluctance on Capitol Hill regarding that slight change in foreign policy?
I did see an interview yesterday with a senator from Michigan as well, talking about this issue. She's supported funding for other places, not just with Ukraine, but with the Israel and Hamas topic as well. And the topic being that you are sending funding to many of these countries, and the power you hold as a senator, basically stating that, you have control over this. And there's been speculation. I think nobody wants to be at war right now with anyone. And also the question of the United States involvement in many of these issues, something that President Trump's been very vocal about recently as well. But like we said, with the Ukraine, this started with the Biden administration. Much of the funding came from that time period. But also now we have President Trump, like you said, sending missiles over. But I think we're at a time, too, where that it seems that, President Trump's very angry with the negotiations that have taken place with Vladimir Putin. Steve Witkoff has been over, the special envoy to that issue, multiple times. And it seems like there's been an effort made to talk to them, unlike the Biden administration stance, stating that we're not, we won't negotiate. We're not going to talk to them. So I do think it's an issue. I think a lot of American people in general don't want to see their tax money going to these things. They're quite sick of it because they are not seeing the returns on any of this in any way. So, but as far as on Capitol Hill, I think that this will start being a topic of conversation for sure going forward. I mean, this is whether it be the Ukraine issue or the Israel-Hamas issue, and we saw it even when we came with the Iran 12-day war, like you talked about.
And NATO Secretary Mark Rutte, who met with President Trump not only at that security summit, but also in the Oval Office, stating for the first time in recent memory, a NATO Secretary General, perhaps because he's a former Dutch Prime Minister, focused on the idea that it's okay, Europe is actually purchasing these missiles. That's somewhat of a change from prior administrations that would just willy-nilly hand over military equipment. And President Trump said, I want people to stop dying so you can have them, but it costs money because we like to make money here in the United States and try to bring back those trade deficits and reverse what's happened over the course of the last several administrations. So what's on the docket for you? You have Congress going home. They have their August recess, a good time for them to meet with constituents in depth. That's the side of it I like. The other side is, wow, it's a full-time job where you work around 8 months when you actually look at clocking in and clocking out. But I understand you have to meet with those constituents and you should be beholden to them. So they have time to listen to those individuals on the ground in their districts. What do you think will come of that? Some of the big issues, and what do you have working at the Daily Caller that might be groundbreaking in the next golden era and a crazy news cycle?
Yes. Well, today specifically, we have Steve Ricchetti, one of the former Biden officials, coming in to talk to the House Oversight. James Comer, of course, planning on questioning him. He just entered the briefing about a few minutes ago, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see if he takes the route of pleading the fifth, like many of his other former colleagues have done, or if he will talk like Ron Klain, the former chief of staff, did last week, answering all the questions of the Oversight Committee. So waiting on some updates regarding that. We have Mike DeLon coming in tomorrow as well. So kind of a jam-packed end of this week, specifically in that area with the Autopin and Joe Biden mental decline investigation going on within the Oversight Committee. But as far as the, Congress going home, this is the recess, like you said, yes, talking to constituents. There has been a little debate, especially coming from our, well-known person, Thomas Massey, who has been putting forth this Epstein resolution. And Epstein has not gone away. We've heard a lot recently in recent reports, and it's kind of headlined the news the last few days regarding Ghislaine Maxwell meeting with Todd Blanche, of course, last week on Thursday and Friday, and talking about saying that she named over 100 names that are in regards to affiliates with Epstein, and, questions about Ghislaine Maxwell and the truthfulness that she could offer. A lot of the victims saying she was the main person that played a role in getting many of, associates to Epstein, associating with him, trying to get young girls and to assist in his pedophilia in a lot of ways. But even yesterday, we saw her attorney come out and saying that she might not want to, or she might have to plead the fifth, to the House Oversight Committee if they do not grant her congressional immunity. So leveraging Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony already, which I feel like we kind of saw coming in a lot of ways. But also they put forth a resolution regarding the plea deal that Epstein took during the 2008 Florida Southern District of Florida, that investigation that took place and went under the radar. And of course, we know former Labor Secretary Alex Acosta was one of the ones that brokered that deal during those years. So a lot of insight coming out on that, hopefully some news, but we also will hopefully see Ghislaine Maxwell testify. I know we've only heard very specific interviews that have taken place with her, but also a lot of the public and congressional members speculating as to what she'd be able to tell the truth and how trustworthy she actually is.
And do you believe that her case will actually reach the Supreme Court potentially, as she seems to be the linchpin in all of this, as you mentioned, and throwing Hail Marys as a desperate attempt to survive what seems to be a very painful road to go down now, and Lady Liberty and Justice seeming to hang over as a cloud over Ghislaine Maxwell?
Right. Well, a lot of mystery surrounding this plea deal. The big issue with this is that many of the victims were not told about the deal, that he could no longer be prosecuted or his affiliates could be prosecuted at the time. So, the DOJ actually did a report on this that came out in 2020 stating that, it was not really the best at all, that the way it was brokered, but nothing was, I guess, the way you would say it would be, that nobody should be in trouble for it necessarily. But, that's surrounded a lot of speculation, and that's why the plea deal has come back into the spotlight regarding Ghislaine Maxwell. She's put forth to the Supreme Court a resolution stating that, she should be covered under that. She was wrongfully prosecuted, should be receiving congressional immunity from Congress if she plans to speak. And also, she does not want to speak in jail. So doing it at a different venue is a big aspect in her list of demands from her attorney that was published the other day.
An ongoing saga that is something very perplexing. It's really, I think, troubled the entire country, and especially Beltway politics makes people really pay attention more than they have in the past. Our eyes, our ears, she's dashing and daring in Washington, D.C. It's Ashley Brassfield, Capitol Hill correspondent for the Daily Caller. Thanks for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Great to see Ashley Brassfield there, based in Washington, D.C. It seems like it was, 2 months ago that she had a live report from the Gulf of America right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. So great to see conservative media growing by leaps and bounds instead of that mainstream media where they have all those false narratives and all those lies going on. Meantime, let's go to a couple sponsors before we move on with our live broadcast here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's go to Tax Network USA. 800-357-1415 is the number there. TNUSA.com/RSBN. Always a great company there, patriotic, on the right side of history, and there to help. So if you're looking to settle some back taxes, you can do so at Tax Network USA. Also, angelpaste.com. Use that RSBN promo code. They're based in Spring, Texas, and you can get that Miracle Cream. There's other products on there as well that you can peruse if you'd like. Use that RSBN promo code. Again, that'll get you a good discount. And you can go to angelpaste.com. Two great sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, so we're about 48 minutes away from the press conference where we're going to hear from Karoline Leavitt, the rock star, the superstar that is, really leading the way in the press, because she's the one that is really telling it like it is, just like President Trump does. But it's great to see that she's facing all these people in the press, whether it's fake news, whether it's on the right side of history with conservative media. Being able to orate in that way, and then also, if need be, really shoot down any BS that's thrown her way. It's just great to see someone with that character there doing a great job at the White House. Also, let's go to President Trump. Speaking of the White House, he recently posted a Truth Social link or a comment here saying, "I have just concluded a telephone conversation with the President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, which was very successful in that more and more we are getting to know and understand each other. The complexities of a deal with Mexico are somewhat different than other nations because of both the problems and assets of the border. We have agreed to extend for a 90-day period the exact same deal as we had for the last short period of time, namely that Mexico will continue to pay a 25% fentanyl tariff, a 25% tariff on cars, and 50% tariff on steel, aluminum, and copper." The president says, additionally, Mexico has agreed to immediately terminate its non-tariff trade barriers, of which there were many. We will be talking to Mexico over the next 90 days with the goal of signing a trade deal somewhere within the 90-day period of time or longer. President Trump says present at the meeting were Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and the United States Trade Representative and Ambassador Jameson Greer, also Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and United States Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller. There will be continued cooperation on the border as it relates to all aspects of security, including drugs, drug distribution, and illegal immigration into the United States. The president ending the long post there saying, "Thank you for your attention to this matter." Great to see all of the information there from the president. That's one of his latest Truth Social posts. And speaking of the border, if you follow me on Truth Social at all, at Matthew Alvarez, I do post various pictures from DOD showing the border wall, showing the Army strikers, showing the other day one of the military members using a drone to monitor and see what's going on the other side of the border. So we know from reporting here at Right Side Broadcasting Network when I was up in D.C. A couple months back that the other side, the drug cartel, the terrorist organization, they actually use drones as well to monitor what's going on and possibly to do drug drops, that kind of thing. So we'll see how things go there when it comes to Mexico. That is a great update from the President of the United States. Let's go a little further south of Mexico to Brazil, as Ricardo Martins will be joining us in just a minute. Ricardo, of course, part of the team with Jair Bolsonaro that I met. My wife and I met him and a number of people at CPAC a couple years back. It's all about this fact sheet that President Trump is addressing threats to the United States from the government of Brazil. Of course, the domestic stories, we're following them. If you are just joining us now, we talked about all sorts of stories at the top of the broadcast. We're going to circle back and get into everything as well. There's just a lot going on. But let's talk about this. I feel like this is very important because you see the inside of what President Trump is thinking when it comes to censorship or freedom of speech, or when it affects the American people. So the fact sheet, of course, titled right there, you see it. Also within that, using leverage to safeguard our interests. So President Trump has consistently reaffirmed his commitment to defending the United States' national security, foreign policy, and economy against foreign threats, including by safeguarding free speech, protecting U.S. companies from unlawful censorship, coercion, and holding human rights abusers accountable for their lawless deeds. Recently, members of the government of Brazil have taken unprecedented actions to tyrannically and arbitrarily coerce U.S. companies to censor political speech, deplatform users, turn over sensitive U.S. user data, or change their content moderation policies on pain of extraordinary fines, criminal prosecution, asset freezes, or complete exclusion from the Brazilian market. This, according to the White House, this undermines not only the viability of U.S. companies' business operations in Brazil, but it also affects the policy of the United States in Brazil, but also the policy of the United States in promoting free and fair elections and safeguarding fundamental human rights at home and abroad. We're going to get into more of this with Ricardo Martins. I know it's a lot getting thrown at you at once, but you can check out this fact sheet on the White House website there, because specifically, if we look into some of the examples from Brazil in 2019, the Brazilian Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes has abused his judicial authority to threaten, target, and intimidate thousands of his political opponents, shield corrupt allies, and suppress dissent, often in coordination with other Brazilian officials, including other justices on Brazil's Supreme Federal Court, to the detriment of U.S. companies operating in Brazil. So this justice has unilaterally issued hundreds of orders to secretly censor his political critics. That's Justice de Moraes. So again, Ricardo Martins to join us any minute from now. As soon as he's there, we'll bring him up on the screen. But whenever there's political dissent and that kind of thing, and people are attacking them, putting them in jail, prosecuting them lawlessly, when it's all this lawfare, going against Jair Bolsonaro, going against the people of Brazil, it's the same thing that we may see here in this country if the following things don't happen. And we're going to have T.S. Dixon on in a little bit. He'll break it down for us too. But we know the 20 core promises are the game plan for our country to win and to continue to win. And we know that a lot of those wins are happening. But we're also keeping tabs on the latest when it comes to the Department of National Intelligence, the information that they're sharing with the DOJ and the FBI in regards to the Russia hoax with Obama, Clinton, and the whole gang there. and also keeping tabs on the latest on the Epstein case out of the DOJ. So we're monitoring all of it. I think the main point is that people that have broken the law have to be held accountable. I know we're going to have a lot of wins and a lot of great things happening. Looking forward to a bit later today as well at 4 o'clock, where President Trump will be signing an executive order all about fitness, and there's going to be professional athletes there, former athletes and some current. There's a lot of great things to be talking about, but I believe there's just precious time that we are in right now in this 3.5 years. Let's go to Ricardo Martins right now. Ricardo, thank you again for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Your thoughts on this fact sheet that the White House just put out, talking about the threat from Brazil and now these 40% additional tariffs. President Trump knows what's going on, doesn't he?
Exactly. I'm glad to see you again. And this is huge in Brazil. And the impact down in Brazil has been all over the country now. There's hundreds of ships on the sea right now stopped from coming to America because of the tariffs. So it's been a nightmare for a lot of people. But President Trump took the best decision ever to stop all the censorship, all the tyranny in Brazil. The human rights abuse has been tremendous. We've been experiencing for a long time this censorship over and over again. And this is the time when President Trump took the decision to stop Judge Alexander de Moraes and all the Lula regime from coming along with China and joining this nightmare league against the United States. So it was not only an economical tariff, but also a blockage from all of the censorship industry, all the tyranny that has been taking place since 2022. And now the Department of State, the State Department is now the U.S. State Department is in conversations with a man, which is a whistleblower, to come to the United States. He's now in Italy, and he is the main man to expose the entire corruption election scandal in 2022. So this has been going for months now, and this is the time that really it's like a decision for Brazilians. Or we go all in a dictatorship like Chinese style, or we become a beacon of freedom like the U.S. This is the time of decision for many Brazilians. People are all over on the streets, and this has been impacting Brazilians in a way that I've never seen it before, Matt. I'll be honest with you. I've never seen it before.
Exactly. And also within the past couple of years, since I'm a news nerd, I watch a lot of stuff, even overseas and, down in Brazil, all over the place. And I remember seeing hundreds of thousands. We're not talking 100. We're not talking 10 people like the other day because they were upset that Colbert didn't have his job anymore. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, flooding the streets of Brazil in support of Jair Bolsonaro, the conservative Make Brazil Great Again leader that got the election stolen from him. And so you are joining that chorus. I'm joining the chorus too, because I'm all about the free world, just like President Trump is, right? I want our country to have freedom. I don't want our country to ever face what your country is facing. But this is why I want to shed light to it. So when we met you at CPAC, my wife and I, remember we walked up to you and we talked to you a little bit, and we saw Jair Bolsonaro walk right by after he spoke. I think it was, 23, 22?
23, yes.
Okay, 2023, CPAC in D.C. At that point, did you know that Jair Bolsonaro was going to face, did he face physical attack? Well, he was stabbed, wasn't he? He faced lawfare? I mean, and this is a guy that's leading the country for freedom. And it's so similar to what we've dealt with President Trump. Yes. So
Bolsonaro, he was once called the Trump of the tropics because of his position for the country. And President Trump like him very much because of his love for Brazil, love for freedom. And of course, he is definitely not a man which will be like in love with the Chinese, for example. So he's 100% pro freedom. And because of the relationship built from the last couple of years between Trump and Bolsonaro, and especially Eduardo Bolsonaro, which is a friend of also President Trump and his family, and also he's one of the Brazilian Bolsonaro's son, and he is in America right now and living in exile because he was forced to flee the country and avoid any prosecution from the same judge that has just got the Magnitsky Act against him in Brazil. So this is huge. And now Brazilians are now in protest all over the country. This is not only just one place, separate place, and a second separate place. It's been all over the country, especially in areas, this is very surprising, in areas that there's more people that like most the socialists. They took over the streets against not only Judge Alexander de Moraes, but also the Lula regime, because they're all together. Remember, it's a Supreme Court coup d'etat with now the executive of Lula's da Silva regime, and they're building this realm of influence against Trump, speaking about especially like the BRICS currency and all of the things that Lula has been very outspoken against. And now he took a fight against Donald Trump, and we do know he cannot win, because he will be in great trouble in the next couple of months, because there's a lot of things coming forth, and the White House already know, the State Department already know, and there's a lot of whistleblower that have come. And remember this for all your audience: Brazil was a huge lab for the censorship to test all the censorship devices and mechanisms against people. So they used the Brazilian model against Americans. That was very clear what happened, and we know it. So now it is the time to take all that apart, all that down, to tear all the walls, all the censorship walls. And we hope the American companies, for example, Truth Social, which was blocked their videos from being shared and within Brazilians, now we can have 100% freedom to speak loud.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing right now. That's why I wanted to have you on the broadcast, joining the chorus of the people of Brazil who are on the right side of history. I remember meeting not only you, sir, but my wife and I were in Nevada at a conference, and we were at the Trump International Hotel there. And there were a number of Brazilians there with, I mean, come on, the flags and all the things, and MAGA and all that.
Very outspoken.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The passion. Come on, we all know that. I mean, my grandpa was from Cuba. I get, some of the Hispanic side. I like it. But the point is, when I was out there, everybody was we love Trump, we love Bolsonaro. We were clapping, we were having a good time. And so that's why it's like ingrained in me now, because I've never traveled to Brazil, but the point is, it's all about the freedom of the people in our country and anywhere in the world. And before I let you go, Ricardo, I want to ask you a question from a 30,000-foot view. Isn't this just deep state globalists trying to put their hands on the people of the world?
Exactly, right on point. There's no doubt that we, as a nation, and believing that the deep state now is in big trouble because they've been exposed, and all these cabal mechanism that has been, because we came to shed light on all the darkness. And as the darkness is getting exposed day by day, we can clearly see that all the things they call conspiracies and everything, it was just the truth. And knowing the truth, we cannot just close our eyes and be blind before all the things that is happening. And yes, it wasn't any conspiracy. It was the truth.
Yeah.
And I really understand that this is going to take place more and more and grow. And I thank God for President Trump. I thank God for you Americans that are helping us. And I cannot thank enough all the Trump administration for all the things they're doing for the benefit of we Brazilians.
Yes, and then in other parts of the world too. I mean, it's really that common sense leadership that we see by this president. Ricardo Martins, thank you again for joining us. I know you've been on the broadcast before. We'll have you back on again. Tell your family hello, and God bless you, sir.
Thank you, friend.
Thank you. And that's what it's all about, of course, being on the right side of history, spitting truth, just being an everyday American, just like many of you that are watching right now when it comes to those of you that voted for President Trump. If you didn't vote for President Trump, maybe you're watching now because you're starting to see the common sense aspect of things. I mean, we are still monitoring a lot of stories, of course, today. We've got the 1 o'clock with Karoline Leavitt coming up. We've got the 3:30 start time for President Trump signing an executive order. We're also monitoring those new developments. Senator Chuck Grassley on various national media speaking about declassified documents from the Durham report being released. Simply put, the evidence and receipts from James Comey's FBI back in 2016 and the FBI's alleged cover-up and assistance with Obama, Clinton, and the gang to subvert the will of the American people. That, according to Tulsi Gabbard. So you remember, it's the same case that the Department of National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard talked to us about last week from the press conference regarding its reporting to the DOJ and FBI about Obama and the gang's alleged involvement in the Russia hoax. We're also monitoring any development from the DOJ regarding the Epstein case. So there's a lot of news going on. Thanks so much for choosing Right Side Broadcasting Network, conservative media, many people on the right side of history speaking out, and thank you for being a part of that. And if you were to really just, how there's this thing called spread disinformation? That disinformation is lying and knowing you're lying, but still spreading that information anyway. Misinformation is a mistake, and reporting it was a mistake. You may have not known that it was a lie. But we're not spreading we're not spreading any of that information, but you can help spread the common sense information on the right side of history by simply sending your friends and family the link from wherever you're watching right now. This is not a joke. This isn't just for ratings or just for TV, or we don't play TV here at Right Side. I don't play TV. That's boring. I did that enough back in the day in mainstream media. Thank God for conservative media. Thank God for being on the right side of history. Anyway, not reading a prompter. Love you guys. Thanks so much for watching here live as it's 12:41. We're going to go to T.S. Dixon here in just a second, conservative analyst and author. Before we do, let's go to a number of our great sponsors, including MyPillow. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Free shipping sale, of course. Always good to support conservative industries out there. So let's keep doing that. MyPillow.com/RSBN. Use that RSBN promo code. Mike Lindell, the great patriot he is. Also, you can get that free shipping by using that RSBN promo code. More than 2,000 products available to you. So thanks again for supporting all of us here at Right Side and supporting MyPillow. And if you'd like to donate to Right Side Broadcasting Network, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801. You can also, if you'd like, we heard that some people want to send some checks or cash. So if you want to do that, you can. We have a P.O. box for you. It's 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama 36830. All right, so we're about 18 minutes or so from the start of the White House press conference there. Looking forward to that. If it's delayed a little bit, of course, we'll stand by with you. We're known to do that here at the network. Let's go now to conservative author and analyst T.S. Dixon. Sir, how you doing?
Hey, Matt, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. All right, so you've been on quite a bit here on Right Side. You've been sharing various things like bingo cards and other kinds of interesting things about the deep state and all, but what's your assessment right now going into the next 3.5 years that we have with President Trump?
Well, right now, this is the most crucial time because before the midterms, while he has the three branches of government in alliance with his party and his agenda, he's got to get as much of the reforms done, cemented, and through before the potential disruptions of the midterm elections, where depending on what's going on in the country, he may pick up seats or he may lose the House and or the Senate.
So what we're hoping for, of course, making it too big to rig. I mean, there's a lot of great things happening in the country. So there's a lot of good momentum from President Trump and the team there. So that's what we see. We see those 20 core promises. We see them basically President Trump stepping up to the plate. There's 3 runners on base. It's the bottom of the 9th. The crowd's chanting USA. He steps up, hits a grand slam. But does he win the whole World Series with that one home run? Is there more that you think needs to be done in order for the people to be like, okay, you know what? There's no way we're going to even get close to losing anything in the midterms.
There's three major areas that the MAGA movement and his base are really paying attention to, in my opinion. The first one is disclosures. You know, he really ran on promising disclosures of JFK files, RFK murder files, MLK files, which he released, and also he batted around the idea of releasing the Epstein files. And so disclosure is so important to the movement and the base because it is a symbol that either elites run our government through a deep state or we own and now run our government now that we got our champion into office. So disclosures are big. The other big area is war and military conflict. You know, he was a peace president. He ran on peace and ending wars. So the more that he finances war, the more that he finances potential genocide in Gaza, the more that he potentially goes to war, or it looks like we may end up in a war through attacks like the Iran strikes, it makes his base very nervous, and it makes a lot of centrists and moderates turn against him. Okay, so that's the second big area. And then the third big area is really the economic factors of, is the economy performing? Are his reforms with the economy, the tariffs, pushing on the Fed to reduce rates, are these things working? Are people's lives getting better after going through what they did with COVID and then the 4 years under Biden and really the stagnation and or the struggling that people have had to go through? Are they seeing it in their bank account?
So the big, beautiful law, of course, a win for the American people. A lot of campaign promises there, a lot of things happening. The inflation, according to too late Jerome Powell's, down to 2%. So inflation has dropped off from whatever that was as a president last time around. But you also have talked about a lot of this, the criminal element of the deep state and how in order to keep those reforms, there needs to be people held accountable, right?
Yeah, so Trump is going to make a big decision in the coming weeks and months. He's going to decide if his second term is going to cement him in history as the 47th president of the United States, or as one of the great reformers that we see on Mount Rushmore of the United States. You know, is he going to be a Mount Rushmore statue, or is he going to be a picture in a book next to 246 other faces? Which one is he going to be? Because the guys on Rushmore, the only presidents that have earned our greatest honors and highest esteem are the great reformers that took all the risks and stood up and did what was necessary to bring about massive reform for the United States, and in doing so created unbelievable freedom, justice, and prosperity in the process. So he's going to make that decision. And if he's going to make that decision, he wants to be a Mount Rushmore president and not just a photo album president, then he's got to complete his reform work, which means he's got to properly get the legislation and the policy reforms through and cemented through Congress, but he's also got to then investigate and punish government crime and clean up the crime and deter these bad actors from coming back in again and taking control of our elected government from the people, which is what we have now.
On the other side of it, would you not say, I mean, I've said it a lot of times here, that President Trump's face should be on Mount Rushmore already? I mean, standing for we the people, standing for freedom, standing for common sense, standing for all the things that we heard him talk about in the campaign promises. But are you saying that another president, whether it's next term or down the road, if it's a deep stater puppet type thing, everything can be reversed unless we investigate and prosecute the crime? Which aren't we seeing that a little bit right now with declassification when it comes to Russia hoax and transparency with the Epstein files?
Yeah, I think Trump finally got mad and angry enough from this planted Epstein evidence that he finally just said, okay, fine, rip the Band-Aid off, I'm going for it. I'm going after them. I'm going to disclose and investigate, and maybe we'll see arrests and indictments. I'm not sure. But it appears it has the visuals of being a good start. But we have to see action. It's not enough to have talk. It's not enough to have press conferences. We have to see actual action. We have to see actual justice playing out.
Do you think, I'm going to interrupt real quick, but do you think that, You know, last week, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of the National Intelligence Department there, spoke perfectly about this evidence and receipts when it comes to Russia, right? Do you think that if there are evidence and receipts, which she says there are, and we've seen it in the media, we've seen it all over the place, should there be a more swift of an action of an actual indictment or arrest to these big names, smaller names, more firings through the FBI and DOJ and the lower levels? I mean, is that something you think is needed for the American people to say, okay, you know what? We're true MAGA. We believe in what President Trump's doing, but this next step of the actual bad guys going away to prison for breaking the law, just like in the movies, you have a hero winning, and then you got the bad guys going to jail. I mean, is that basically what we need to see?
We need to see that. Now, there's official processes in law enforcement and that need to take place. So they need to go through the official channels and the official processes. But, you know, it shouldn't take long, I wouldn't think. It didn't take long for them to go get Manafort or Roger Stone or Steve Bannon or that election worker, I think Tina in Colorado, and throw these people in jail. It didn't take them long. So I don't think I hope it doesn't take our people that long.
That's a great point. Tina Peters out there in Colorado. Of course, President Trump speaking about Tina as well. And then you think of the J6 situation. You remember that reporting by Tucker Carlson, and there was some, I think, at that network. They're like, no, we shouldn't air this. And Tucker's like, screw that. I'm airing the video of Jacob walking around, being escorted around the Capitol, and then using that public swaying of public opinion with all the lies that we saw there just with J6 alone. So, I mean, rubber meets the road here. I mean, this is something that we want to see, these reforms. I love the 20 core promises to the American people by President Trump and the RNC. It includes defending the Constitution and ending the weaponization of government. So within that framework, what about financially? I know we spoke on a pre-interview about that a little bit too, about keeping everything on the up and up there.
You know, like I said before, Trump is either going to be a pendulum president, which means the presidency swings to the left, and then it swings to the right, then it's going to swing right back over to the left. Look at his first term, okay? That was a pendulum. I loved his first term. That was great. We had great prosperity for about 3.5 years. But then as soon as he left office, we had Biden, and it swung hard to the left. And most of the things that he did, like sealing the border and whatnot, they just opened the border. You know, he set up the pipelines for success. They shut the pipelines down. He set certain foreign policies. They reversed those policies. So it's so easy, if you don't submit your reforms, for the opposition party to come right in and reverse everything you did. And so it only lasts transient, like supposedly inflation, right? It's temporary. And that's not going to serve the American people. Or is he going to be a catapult president that's going to catapult America and the West into a whole new golden era like he has spoken about, which is possible. Teddy Roosevelt did it. Lincoln did it. George Washington did it. Even Andrew Jackson did it. We haven't had one of these massive reform-style presidents in so long. Nixon started to do it. We know what happened to him. JFK started to do it. We know what happened to him. So it's very risky. There's a lot of forces at odds. There's an entrenched establishment that wants to stop presidents from becoming populist and performing these kinds of dramatic reforms that they won't be able to counteract. And so we need, if he wants to be a Mount Rushmore catapult president, not just another pendulum, just another face in the book of the 200-some presidents, then this is what it's going to take. Is he Garfield, right, or is he Roosevelt? Which one is he? If he wants to do that, it's not easy. It's not easy to get your face chiseled onto Mount Rushmore. It's not easy to reform the West to the point where you are a point in history that we look back from and say everything was different before him. But it can be done. So I brought a visual aid, Matt. I know your audience loves my visual aids. And I'm going to share my screen here. Give me 1 second. Is that coming through okay?
Yes, sir.
All righty. So this is my bingo card evidence board of government crime. So if Trump really wants to become a place in history, and his legacy is he was one of the greats, like a Lincoln and a Washington, a Roosevelt, this is what he's going to have to do. First, he's going to have to go after government crime with his DOJ, his FBI, and even his CIA. And so you can see here we have a list just of 20, maybe out of 100 crimes that we know have been committed and that we need Trump to go after. The 320,000 missing illegal alien children, 21 trillion missing dollars, Act Blue, Twitter files, open border, human trafficking, COVID crimes, all the USAID money laundering that Elon Musk's Doge organization exposed, 2020 election fraud. We know that the Chinese were sending over planes full of ballots, pre-printed ballots, and sending them all over the country. So a lot of crime hasn't been investigated that we know of. No one's gone to jail. There's no justice there. Two-tier justice system. If he wants the people to love him and he wants to really transform the West, he needs to investigate these crimes because many of them lead to the establishment that is running our country. And so if you want to break their control and their hold over our society, our civilization, you have to expose their crimes and get justice. But there's another thing that's happening, and he's actually better on this one. You can see here, only Crossfire Hurricane is something we know that they're working on. But I also created a financial one. This is my bingo card of U.S. theft Jeopardy, the game of how we are, the people are being ripped off. Our dollars, personal dollars, and tax dollars are being stolen by elites, by special interest groups, NGOs, and globalists. And so I just wanted to create an easy way for people to see all the ways that our country, the richest country in the history of mankind, is being stolen from. One, by central banking, which a lot of people don't understand because it's withheld from the education system. So we never learn what a debt-based money supply is, why we have a $37 trillion national debt. There's a reason for that. Why we need worker income tax, which we never had in the history of our country until we had a central bank. And then the secret foreign loans they can make to other banks around the world and not tell the government, and that this is the source of inflation, which also is them stealing money. I'm not going to go through them all, but globalism is another thing with the UN, NATO, all the NGOs. Trump's been pretty good on that. He's been pretty good on that, I will say that. And he is talking about worker income tax, though he hasn't done anything about it yet. We have money laundering, the Doge money laundering that was exposed by Doge, not committed by Doge. We have these fake contracts where they spend billions. We spend billions for Wi-Fi in rural areas or car charging stations, and nothing is done, or maybe 8 units are done out of the thousands that are supposed to be put in. Where'd the money go? We have 21 trillion missing dollars from our government in the last 25 years. And then you have the foreign workers. That's just taking money from American workers and lowering wages. Open borders, he's great on that. H-1B visas, they've talked about it. Chain migration, haven't done anything, talked about it. One-sided trade deals, Trump is excellent on that. So he gets decent marks for foreign workers, but there's no consequences for the employers. War is another thing where it's war, except for World War II, is a mechanism of wealth making and wealth taking. And so it's a huge area where we're being stolen from, and he hasn't been talking about that yet. And the final one, which we're supposed to have the strongest laws in America, they're called the Sherman Antitrust Act, which prevents banks, hedge funds, and asset management companies from coming in, buying up whole segments of our economy and creating cartels. Well, the globalists and the central bankers have done a great job in weakening those laws over the last 80 years. And so now we have more cartels and monopolies than we've ever had in our history. And these are supposed to be illegal in America. We have big tech cartel, big banking cartel, big oil cartel. Maybe the worst is the asset management and hedge fund cartels. And then we have the industrial military cartel. So somebody's got to be like a Roosevelt, a Teddy Roosevelt, by the way, and start talking about the fact that we should not be having cartels and monopolies in America. It should be illegal. And all it does is steal money from the people. So this is the U.S. theft jeopardy. And you can see he's starting to get better scores in globalism and foreign workers. He's doing great on that. But we need to see more action in these other major areas where we, the people, are being stolen from. If he wants his head on Mount Rushmore, that is. If he wants to be a true great president.
So it's 12:58 Eastern Time. You're listening to T.S. Dixon. He is a conservative analyst and author. And, you know, you're obviously on Right Side Broadcasting Network. You know that I love President Trump. I believe you love President Trump. I believe our viewers love President Trump.
Yes.
Let's get some context on who you are in the sense of this. First of all, I think that we, the people, we're the boss anyway. We're the ones that vote for our representatives. So we, the people, run the country, hopefully, right? So an everyday American, tell us, TS, why you're doing this. Why do you talk the way you talk about the Jeopardy board, the bingo card, and all this specific information? Why do you share that here on Right Side right now?
Well, I'm an average American, an every guy, just like so many of you out there. And I've been a conservative for more than 20 years. And what I found was that when I became a conservative, most of the information about the economy, about how the systems work, about our government, about our history, was withheld from me in my education years. It's withheld from all of us. And so I had to go out and work to put a puzzle together and research for 2 decades to be able to assemble an understanding of all of these elements of our government, our society, our economy, and how things work. And what I realized was when I talked to other conservatives that had put the puzzle together, I asked them, how long did it take you? And most of them, it took 15, 20, 25 years. And I thought, what a shame that the social engineers have so held this back from the media, from the arts, from the education system, that it's on the individual conservative to go out and do all this hard work and labor and research just to try to understand about civics and about our country and about our economy and about what's being done to us. And I thought, well, I want to change that. And so I put out a book in January of this year called The Woke Mind Viruses that breaks down the 4 leftist ideologies, their histories, founding fathers, core beliefs that we're up against that are the coalition on the left. But then I also do the breakdown of our history, of our people, our ideology, what we believe in and why, where it comes from, and the situation that we find ourselves today in the West and what to do about it. What are the actual countermeasures we can take to reform our countries? And in doing so, I case study many times in history and in modern times when great reforms have taken place successfully, and I've broken that down into a 4-stage process that's the pattern every single time. And so when you realize that, you realize Trump has this incredible opportunity now in the seat he sits in with the Congress that he's got, the Supreme Court that he's got, and that he runs the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA. He's the top cop. He's the top prosecutor in the whole country, and he runs the military. And so he can investigate any crime where there's probable cause, and he can prosecute crime and indict. So the power is his. I saw a tweet yesterday, or a truth post yesterday or the day before, of him saying, you know, all these people need to be in jail. And the first thing I thought was, Trump, you are the top prosecutor in the country. These people will only go to jail if you use your prosecutorial power and prosecute them. So let's prosecute them. If they've committed crimes, investigate them. If you uncover evidence, indict them and prosecute them. That's your DOJ there. That's your FBI. That's your CIA. These are your organizations that report to you, sir. You are the top cop and the top prosecutor. So he has this unbelievable chance to permanently create these great reforms, and I hope he does.
That's perfectly said there. If you were watching our interview with Ricardo Martins from Brazil just moments ago, what they're dealing with there is the kind of thing we don't want to see on our shores ever. We don't want to turn into, and by the way, I had family that lived in California. I love the state of California, but we don't want to turn into parts of California here in the United States as a whole. We don't want to turn into what Brazil's dealing with now. We don't want to deal with what the UK's dealing with now. We definitely don't want to turn into China. So you're saying basically the way to do that is to prosecute those that have broken the law in the deep state, no?
Absolutely. You know, we are up against a global establishment that have unbelievable wealth and power from the banking industry, from the oil industries, and then from international business. And these people have sat above our civilization for decades or more than a century, ever since 1913 when we got ourselves our 4th United States Central Bank, which they influence and own. You know, it's a public-private institution. And the regional banks are owned by the member banks. So if these people own the member banks, they own the central bank, and that runs all of the regulation in our economy. And so because we have this system, they have sat on top of us and stolen from us for more than 100 years. And in order to maintain that power, they, through Lord Alfred Milner from England and South Africa, formed and created the War Cabinet during World War I, which was the birth of the modern spy agency. And so now we have the MI5, MI6, we have the CIA, NSA, we have Mossad, we have the Australian agencies and whatnot. And so these people also sit on top of these organizations and utilize them, even though they are supposed to report to our executive branches. And so we have what they call a deep state. So we have globalist elites and a deep state, that the establishment that have been oppressing and stomping on the rights, will, and wealth of the people. And our ancestors wouldn't stand for it, and we won't stand for it. This is what the same reason why George Washington and the others fought the Revolutionary War against the Bank of England, the British Crown, the East India Trading Company, and their network of spy agents and spies around the world. And they fought them and won and created 250 years of freedom and prosperity and justice, gave rise to the modern world through the industrial revolutions. And everything we have today is because these brave men did something in their generation. Well, now a new establishment has formed above the West, and the populist movements have elected champions in all these different countries. In our country, it's Donald Trump. And what we're pleading with him to do is to stand up and to break the power of these people. And they've done everything to try to stop him, from stealing elections to trying to assassinate him, to trying to smear him, destroy his name, bring him up on false charges, get him with lawfare. They've tried everything to get him, and nothing's worked. But now's the time. He has a window of time to cement his reforms and complete the work that the people have put him in office to do. And if he does it, he will be one of the greatest presidents in living memory. And if he doesn't do it, if he's just another president, just does normal things, we will swing right back to the left as soon as he's out of office.
Can you talk to us finally about, as we await Karoline Leavitt there at the White House press conference, as soon as that starts, of course, we'll be taking you guys there, that are watching. If you're just joining us, T.S. Dixon, conservative analyst and author, has been on the broadcast a few times. Before I let you go, let's dive into, we have good, we have evil. What's the root of the evil that we started out with? I remember you were on the broadcast one time. Of course, you know, God and the devil, we get that. But like outside of that, are we talking about Darwin and Marxism and all that? Can you break that down a little bit for us? That's where it seems like all of these institutions and all of that started, right?
The source of good and evil in society can really be traced back to the core ideology. And an ideology is just a set of shared beliefs that forms a view of the world and declares a mission, especially a political ideology. And so in the 1700s, an ideology was evolving out from the old world of monarchies and papal rule in old Europe. And these two movements were called the Great Awakening, which came to the colonies and spread like wildfire, and then the European Enlightenment. And it created an ideology called constitutionalism, capitalism, and theism, which today combined, we just call it conservatism or American conservatism. And they believe in that there is a God creator that grants us unalienable rights, okay? And the role of government is to protect these rights of the people and protect our property, because among these rights are life, liberty, and property, or the pursuit of happiness. And that we should have freedom. If the government gets out of line, we should be able to change our government. The first time they did it through war, now we do it through elections. And that truth exists. We know these things are true because we see the evidence. They're self-evident. So truth and evidence exists. And then lastly, that we should be free to create companies, create goods and services, and sell them to meet the needs and wants of our fellow man at whatever price the two should agree, with limited government interference. That's capitalism. Now that's the 1700s. That forms the American ideology in the free world. And it's the first time you had a free system in all of human history that then leads to the modern world. But then 50 years later, there was a response to this movement. I call it the Dark Enlightenment. We had these thinkers in Europe, Darwin, Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Karl Marx, that come and write these books that take hold and create a counter movement, create the modern left. And they believe, no, there is no God. We know there's evolution. We all crawled out of the ooze and evolved over hundreds of millions of years. And so because there's no God, God is dead. Therefore, there's no good or evil, no afterlife, no morality. And all that's left is survival of the fittest, that the strong eat the weak. Okay, so the only purpose to life, because there is no purpose to life on the left, is the will to power. That's all you've got left. And beauty and pleasure and to extend one's life. And then Karl Marx says, well, if there is no God and all there is will to power, this is the only purpose we have, then here's a 10-step program to achieving will to power in your country. It's called the Communist Revolution that he wrote in the Communist Manifesto. And that is called Marxism. And that is the ideology of the left. And so you can see these are two different worlds, the one that created freedom and the one that created socialism, communism, Nazism in the 1900s and killed 100 million people. One gave freedom, life, liberty, and justice in the modern world and gave rise to all these technologies and conveniences and benefits and medicines that cure diseases. The other one killed 100 million people and creates misery, starvation, and death.
Man,
that's evil.
TS, that articulation is 100% a grand slam home run. So then can you believe it? Then we've got, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker crying like a baby on the floor the other day, Mamdani in New York. These guys are all anti the conservative foundational upbringing.
Yes. In the modern West, there's three ideologies. Most people come to them either knowingly or unknowingly, usually unknowingly. You have what I described in the beginning, where it starts with there's a God and he grants us our rights. That's the conservative, that's the right-leaning view. Then you have the one that there's no God. They're vicious about that there's no God, God's dead. There's no purpose to life. There's none of this good and evil stuff. And they also don't believe there's truth. They don't believe in truth. We believe in truth. That's the difference. That's why there's a million genders on their side. There's male and female on ours, right? That's the difference. And so on that end, you have the left. And then in the middle, you have the majority of people in the center, and they're called utilitarians, though they don't know that that's their philosophy. And it was written down by John Stuart Mill from England, who was a statesman. And they basically are not sure if there's a God. They're like, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not a God, but I'm not sure. That's most people. And so they think, well, at least laws in the government should exist to protect people from harming each other. And what they focus on is pursuing their happiness. And they like the idea of rights from Jefferson, though they don't think the rights came from God. So these are the three views. You have those centrists or moderates, those are not sure about God. You have the conservatives, or there is a God for sure. He grants us our rights. And then you have the leftists who said, no, there's no God. We hate God. There's no meaning to life. There's no truth. There's just the will to power. And that's all they're trying to do. They'll lie. They'll manipulate. They'll cheat. They'll steal. They'll bring about bloody revolution, as long as it'll help them achieve will to power.
And then they'll commit
do anything for power.
Then they'll, lawfare against the president and all of the weaponization that we've seen over the years. So this is the context that I wanted to hear from you, sir, because you've been on the broadcast before. You've been talking about the bingo card, the different things, the crimes that should be investigated, and if there's receipts and evidence, people should be held accountable. But I wanted to get that full, circle on where you're coming from with all of this, because I think it's good for people to hear that from you. I did say finally before, but I'll do it one more time. Finally, just right now, moving forward, just personally, obviously I believe you have a family and all that. I mean, this is the reason why you do this, right? Just like any conservative voice out there.
Oh yeah, my wife got sick of hearing this stuff from me all the time. Said, you need to do something with this. You need to share this out with society, with people. And we need to help people with this. And I was thinking about it, considering what she was saying. And then she got pregnant with our first child, and that was it. We both knew we had to do something. And so I put the book out, and I've been speaking out on it. And I've got to use my voice. We have rights for a reason. If we don't use them, we might lose them. And so I must speak, because if I don't use my freedom of speech, I don't want to lose my freedom of speech. And I want to make one more point to what we were talking about earlier. The fact that they don't believe in God, they don't believe in afterlife, they don't believe in consequences, right and wrong, good or evil. They don't think there's good or evil. It's all relative. That's why, and they'll do anything for will to power, that's why they commit so much crime and break the law so much. But they do it in secret, and they protect each other. And so that's why if Trump just investigates a little bit, lifts a few rocks up, he's going to find evidence of tons and tons of government crime, because these people have been in power committing crime. And in our system, we can't allow that. We must have law and order. And like the Democrats love to say when they were going after Trump with lawfare, no one in this country is above the law. No one.
Exactly right. And to your point, as we take a live look there at the White House press briefing room as we await Karoline Leavitt, we see that no one is above the law, and we see that President Trump is right now we're seeing that he's starting to look into things with the DOJ, the FBI, and also the Department of National Intelligence. We're seeing that slow roll happen. We'll see if it gets more swift and speeds up. A number of other things we could talk about as we are awaiting Karoline Leavitt there as well. A lot of news happening now. We know that specifically Chuck Grassley was on one of the networks talking about this declassification of the Durham report when it comes to Russia, and the whole hoax there. These burn bags, all of these different specifics that we're hearing about. This is that truth and transparency, is it not?
It is. There's volumes of evidence. Like Elon was describing. I was thinking about this yesterday. When Elon was running Doge, and he was talking about the rotten apple that is the financial elements of the federal government. He goes, you're looking in the apple to find the poison worm and fish it out, and so you can clean the apple. He goes, the problem is I didn't realize there's no apple. It's all worm. It's a ball of worms. That's what it's become. And the same thing with this. It's a ball of crime. There's going to be an insurmountable amount of evidence about this crime. We watched it play out on primetime television. We watched them perjure themselves in front of the Senate and Congress. I mean, there's so much crime here. All you have to do is just do a brief or light investigation, and you'll be able to indict. And so that's what we really need to see out of this president. And I want to touch on another thing. Trump, for whatever reason, has a reluctance to do this. He has a reluctance to go after and investigate Democrats. He has a reluctance to go after other presidents. He has a reluctance to go after political figures with the power of the DOJ. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe a sense of fairness or not wanting to destabilize our government or not wanting to seem like he's part of a banana republic operation or just rules of decorum of presidents. I'm not sure. But the reality is he is our top law enforcement officer in the country and our top prosecutor. And the only remedy that we have, because we know these internal inspectors don't work. They don't work. Look at Horowitz and all that he tried to do with that whole investigation. It didn't work. And his reports to Congress were almost laughable. You go, yeah, they committed this stuff, but we're not going to do anything to them. So the inspector general system has not worked, doesn't work. The only remedy that we have is the President of the United States and the Attorney General. That's it. And if they won't take action to give justice to the people and punish highest level federal government crime, then we have no remedy and we have no justice. And that's not the job. The job, duty, and honor of the President and the Attorney General is to investigate crime where there's probable cause, whatever may happen. Let justice be done. May the heaven fall.
Right, and the media, of course, the mainstream media covering for all of these crimes over the years. I mean, we're just telling it like it is here on Right Side at 1:17 Eastern. Let's shift over to El Salvador. So you're saying, T.S. Dixon, if we would run it like El Salvador is doing, I mean, didn't he go into one of these meetings and say, if you're either going to be loyal to what we're doing here or you're going to get let go? I mean, how did that go down?
Well, in El Salvador, yeah, that was the sentiment. But he also, no one was safe. He investigated everybody in his country to root out corruption and crime. Because he knows you can't maintain the conservative power in a country if you have a bunch of corrupt officials undermining you and doing things behind your back and trying to commit more crime and subterfuge. It doesn't work. You have to root it out. So I believe in cleaning house when you come in. He's done that in various ways, Department of Education and others. But we saw by those scorecards and those bingo cards I was sharing earlier that there's a lot of work to do. It's not enough to do these symbolic gestures. You've got to roll up your sleeves and get the job done if you're going to save the country. And you're going to be a catapult president that's going to take us to our next dimensional level in this country, which will then ripple out to the entire West, maybe even the world. If you're going to be a Lincoln, a Washington, a Teddy Roosevelt, and deserve to be on Mount Rushmore, or if you're going to be another first term, like a Balansaro. Balansaro was a great president in Brazil. What happened as soon as he was gone? Boom, it's worse than it was before him. You got Lula and this wild Supreme Court justice that's running the country like Count Dracula. I mean, it's like a dictatorship now. And they just had a great big conservative guy in power right before them. You know, this thing can swing if these guys don't know how to run a full, true, comprehensive reform and clean up a country. Then that's what happens. That's the risk. So I understand he's got reluctance, but he's got to get over it. He's got to get angry. He's got to get Hulk mode. We need Hulk Trump in power, and we need to have him rip the Band-Aids off, get rid of the kid gloves, take the training wheels off the bike, and use the prosecutorial power. He has the power, and instead of tweeting or truth posting about criminals going to jail and truth posting about justice, he needs to actually enforce the law and bring about justice.
No, I mean, I saw it on Truth Social as well. I mean, he posted 15 straight posts, I think, on Sunday morning. I don't remember the time, but yeah, there were definitely things talking about seditious conspiracy, treason, showing, a number of the deep staters behind bars. This was from the leader of the free world, President Trump, on his Truth Social. So to your point, I believe we, the people, hear what you're saying on that. I mean, we have to have our freedoms locked in. I think that's so key. So T.S. Dixon, conservative analyst and author, where can people find you, sir?
They can find me at tsdixon.com, and they can find my book, The Woke Mind Viruses, which goes into all of this, on Audible or on Amazon.com.
T.S., thank you so much for joining us and spending quite the time with us here on this Thursday, July 31st.
Thanks, Matt.
You bet. All right, so live interview there with T.S. Dixon, just breaking down his analysis, his take on what's going on out there. Thanks so much for sticking with us. I know it's a 1 o'clock start time for the press conference. Of course, a lot going on with the 24/7 news cycle. We're monitoring a lot of stories here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. We see the door opening. We'll see if Karoline Leavitt will step out any minute from now. We're going to go to a couple sponsors. Even while we're in the middle of a sponsor, if we see Karoline come out, we'll go directly to her. Let's go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Medical freedom starts with access, and that's exactly what All Family Pharmacy delivers. They're changing the way people get their medications. No insurance, no red tape, just fast, reliable care shipped straight to your door. So, because getting the treatments you need shouldn't be complicated. All Family Pharmacy makes it simple in just 3 easy steps. You select the medications you need online, a licensed doctor reviews your order and writes the prescription, and then your medications are shipped directly to your door. And they carry the essentials like NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, and more than 200 more medications. And yes, every order includes a doctor's prescription, so you can take control of your health with a pharmacy that actually works for you. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. As it's 1:22, one more sponsor, callshe.com/RSBN. If you'd like to bet, trade, or check out some polls, all sorts of topics, science, technology, faith, politics, weather, sports, you can do that. callshe.com/RSBN, a great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. We're 22 minutes after the hour. It's 1 o'clock on the East Coast, 1:22 on the East Coast, of course, and awaiting Karoline Leavitt, the rock star, superstar press conference lead there. And we'll hear what some of the fake news has to say there. We have, of course, some conservative media members in that room. You have to be obviously professional with the colleagues there, but still the content is what it's all about. And this really goes back to, if you've been watching since that interview with T.S. Dixon, what is the media doing? What side are they working and covering for? So is there a side that is good? Yep. Is there a side that's evil? Yep. And which one are we on? We're on the good side. Pretty simple stuff. We tell it like it is because it's simple. It's common sense. It's freedom. It's our belief in God and our Constitution of the United States and Old Glory, the American flag, all of the things. And that's what we want to have here in this country. And it'd be great if other countries would follow suit in that. It'd be great if someone like Bolsonaro was the president in Brazil and not Lula, this guy that's acting like he's some dictator, or various leaders around the world. A shout out definitely to Viktor Orban in Hungary. A shout out to the Polish leader. A shout out to Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. These great leaders that are saying, nah, we're staying on the right side of history for this one because the people simply want to be free. And I believe that's the same way in China. The people there, think about it. If we were all born in China, I wouldn't be able to talk like this if I was a Chinese journalist. No way. So we don't want that here in this country. I am dead set to that. I don't want that. I just want that freedom. And we get that through prayer, hard work, voting, getting out the vote, and also public opinion is a big deal as well. So let's go to Karoline Leavitt right now.
We have a lot of news today, and I have quite a few announcements for you, so let's get to it. First, on behalf of the President and the White House, we express our deepest condolences to the family of New York police officer Islam, who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of his fellow New Yorkers. As the funeral services are held in New York City today, everyone at the White House is keeping the officer's family, friends, and fellow NYPD law enforcement officers in our thoughts and prayers. The President has always, and will always, proudly stand with our men and women in blue. May God bless Officer Islam and the other individuals who were tragically killed in this senseless act of violence. In other news, President Trump's working visit to Scotland was a huge success. In less than 48 hours, President Trump brokered the biggest, most impactful trade deal in history and prevented a war in Asia for the second time since he took office. We have never had a president who wields the full power of the United States to negotiate good deals for our country and its people like President Trump. This is what maximum leverage looks like. On the peace front, President Trump helped deliver an immediate and unconditional ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia. The two countries were engaged in a deadly conflict that had displaced more than 300,000 people until President Trump stepped in to put an end to it. The president spoke directly on the phone with the acting Prime Minister of Thailand and the Prime Minister of Cambodia to inform both leaders that unless they brought their conflict to an end, there would be no trade discussions or agreements with the United States. Almost immediately afterward, a peace was brokered that will save thousands of lives and allowed for trade negotiations with these countries to resume, and they have. The president has now ended conflicts between Thailand and Cambodia, Israel and Iran, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, India and Pakistan, Serbia and Kosovo, and Egypt and Ethiopia. This means President Trump has brokered, on average, about one peace deal or ceasefire per month during his 6 months in office. It's well past time that President Trump was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. I know the topic of Israel is on everyone's mind. I have an update from Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who I got off the phone with this morning. Special Envoy Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee had a very productive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other officials today in Israel on the topic of delivering much-needed food and aid to Gaza. President Trump is a humanitarian with a big heart, and that's why he sent Special Envoy Witkoff to the region in an effort to save lives and end this crisis. Tomorrow, Special Envoy Witkoff and Ambassador Huckabee will be traveling into Gaza to inspect the current distribution sites and secure a plan to deliver more food and meet with local Gazans to hear firsthand about this dire situation on the ground. The Special Envoy and the Ambassador will brief the President immediately after their visit to approve a final plan for food and aid distribution into the region, and we will provide more details for all of you once that plan is approved and agreed on by the President of the United States. On the trade front, the President secured a historic trade agreement with the European Union that puts America first and fundamentally strengthens the economic relationship between the two largest economies in the world. This deal delivers on two of President Trump's core promises on trade, supercharging America's manufacturing capacity and opening up foreign market access to American businesses. The deal guarantees that American businesses will have unprecedented levels of access to the European Union markets to export our American-made goods. Also, as part of this agreement, the EU will purchase $750 billion in U.S. energy to strengthen our energy dominance, reduce European reliance on adversarial sources, and narrow our trade deficit with the EU. The EU will also make new investments of $60 billion in the United States, in addition to the more than $100 billion the EU companies already invest in the U.S. every year. All of these massive purchases and investments will happen by the end of 2028. What we are watching is President Trump rebuilding the greatest economy in the history of the world and simultaneously proving the so-called economic experts wrong at every turn. Media pundits said a trade deal with the EU this monumental and beneficial to America would be impossible, but President Trump made it happen. The so-called economic experts repeatedly said that the American economy would be in a recession this summer. Well, summer is here. It's almost over. And that recession does not exist. Yesterday, in fact, real GDP growth in the second quarter increased at a 3.0% annual rate, significantly above expectations. President Trump's America First policies are driving economic growth, as he always said they would. And this growth is being driven by the private sector, not the government. Federal government spending fell for a second straight quarter, while real business fixed investment rose by nearly 2%. Following its first quarter surge. President Trump is right-sizing government spending, reversing the damage done by the Biden administration, and allowing the private sector to flourish. The same so-called experts claimed that President Trump's tariffs would spike inflation and hurt American consumers. But consumer spending growth just accelerated, and inflation remains right on track. For the past 5 straight months, core inflation has come in below market expectation and remains in line with the Fed's 2% inflation target. Meanwhile, customs and tariff revenues have already totaled more than $150 billion since President Trump took office, leading to the first June budget surplus in nearly a decade. Those revenues will skyrocket even further starting tomorrow when new reciprocal tariff rates take effect. President Trump is restoring America's economic sovereignty by reducing our reliance on foreign countries, boosting investment in the U.S. to the tune of trillions of dollars, and creating hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs for the American people. With America finally put first on trade and the largest middle-class tax cuts in history and other pro-growth provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill beginning to take effect, the American economy will boom like never before over the course of the next 3.5 years, thanks to the president's vision. Finally, as you all know, the president signed an executive order earlier this year to solve the problem of exorbitant pharmaceutical pricing. According to recent data, the prices that Americans have been paying for brand name drugs are more than 3 times the price other similarly developed nations pay. The president is determined to solve this problem and took further action today. He has signed 17 letters to pharmaceutical companies' CEOs. And I would like to read you one of these letters to the CEO of Eli Lilly. All of these letters will be provided to you following this briefing. This is to the CEO of Eli Lilly from the President of the United States. On May 12, 2025, I signed an executive order delivering most favored nation prescription drug pricing to American patients to stop global freeloading and guarantee that Americans pay the same prices enjoyed by other developed nations. Right now, brand name drugs in the United States are up to 3 times higher on average than anywhere else for the identical medicines. This unacceptable burden on hardworking American families ends with my administration. Most proposals the Trump administration has received to resolve this critical issue promised more of the same, shifting blame and requesting policy changes that would result in billions of dollars in handouts to industry. Moving forward, the only thing I will accept from drug manufacturers is a commitment that provides American families immediate relief from the vastly inflated drug prices and an end to the free ride of American innovation by European and other developed nations. Accordingly, I am calling on Eli Lilly and Company and every manufacturer doing business in our great country to take the following actions within the next 60 days. Extend the most favored nation pricing to Medicaid, guarantee most favored nation pricing for newly launched drugs, return increased revenues abroad to American patients and taxpayers, provide for direct purchasing at most favored nation pricing. The President's team, including Secretary Kennedy and Administrator Oz, stand ready to implement these terms. The President expects to further engage with them immediately in good faith to deliver relief for American families. Make no mistake, a collaborative effort towards achieving global pricing parity would be the most effective path for companies, the government, and American patients. But if you refuse to step up, we will deploy every tool in our arsenal to protect American families from continued abusive drug pricing practices. Americans are demanding lower drug prices, and they need them today. Other nations have been freeloading on U.S. innovation for far too long, and it is time they pay their fair share. I look forward to your binding commitments to each of these goals by September 29th, 2025, and my team stands ready to assist with implementation questions. Thank you for your immediate attention to this vital national priority. Signed, President Donald J. Trump, Again, to the CEO of Eli Lilly, this letter in its form has been designed for each of the 17 major drug and pharmaceutical companies in the United States, and we're happy to provide you the full list. And I believe you will see all 17 letters popping on Truth Social very shortly, so you can look out for those, and I'm happy to take any further questions. Before we get to questions, I do have one other announcement from the White House and from the President. We are proud to announce that the construction of the new White House ballroom will begin. For 150 years, presidents, administrations, and White House staff have longed for a large event space on the White House complex that can hold substantially more guests than currently allowed. President Trump has expressed his commitment to solving this problem on behalf of future administrations and the American people. The White House is one of the most beautiful and historic buildings in the world. Yet the White House is currently unable to host major functions, honoring world leaders in other countries without having to install a large and unsightly tent approximately 100 yards away from the main building's entrance. The White House State Ballroom will be a much-needed and exquisite addition of approximately 90,000 total square feet of innately designed and carefully crafted space with a seated capacity of 650 people, which is a significant increase from the 200-person seated capacity in the East Room of the White House. In recent weeks, President Trump has held several meetings with members of the White House staff, the National Park Service, the White House Military Office, and the United States Secret Service to discuss design features and planning. President Trump has chosen McCreary Architects as the lead architect, which is well known for their classical architectural design and based right here in our nation's capital. The construction team will be headed by Clark Construction, and the engineering team will be led by AECOM. The project will begin in September 2025, and it is expected to be completed long before the end of President Trump's term. President Trump and other donors have generously committed to donating the funds necessary to build this approximately $200 million structure. The United States Secret Service will provide the necessary security enhancements and modifications. The White House ballroom will be substantially separated from the main building of the White House, but at the same time, its theme and architectural heritage will be almost identical. The site of the new ballroom will be where the small, heavily changed and reconstructed East Wing currently sits. The East Wing was constructed in 1902 and has been renovated and changed many times, with a second story added in 1942. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles has provided the following statement. President Trump is a builder at heart and has an extraordinary eye for detail. The President and the Trump White House are fully committed to working with the appropriate organizations to preserve the special history of the White House while building a beautiful ballroom that can be enjoyed by future administrations and generations of Americans to come. In the White House, we will continue to provide the American public and all of you in the press with updates on this project at whitehouse.gov/visit. And if you go there shortly, you will be able to see renderings and visuals of what this ballroom will look like, both the exterior and the interior. I have provided some photos for all of you in the room today. This is the interior of the ballroom space. It's quite beautiful. And then this is the exterior of the ballroom space. As you can see, it will come off of the executive mansion as it sits today, and the East Wing will be modernized and renovated. We're happy to answer any further questions on that, Jennifer. Since you're so eager, I will go to you, but first, as always, I want to start with our new media seat, Ben Weingarten. Why don't you go ahead, Ben?
Thank you. In light of the release, the declassification of the annex to the Durham report today, beyond any potential prosecutions, the outcomes of which will likely be uncertain, what does the President believe justice for Russiagate ought to entail? Might it include restitution for those whose lives were upended as a consequence of Russiagate, and perhaps a major reorganization of the national security apparatus?
Well, I think a major organization of the national security apparatus, at least here at the White House within the National Security Council, has indeed taken place, and the President entrusts his current CIA director, John Ratcliffe, and our ODNI director, Tulsi Gabbard, to make the necessary changes to ensure classified intelligence, especially that could implement or hurt the national security of our country, does not make its way into the hands of irresponsible actors who want to politicize that intelligence for their own end. Since you brought up the declassification report that was put out by Senator Grassley today, I'm glad you brought it up, because this should be a story every outlet in this room should be covering. This is further evidence that Hillary Clinton approved the Russia hoax against President Trump. Her campaign financed it. Again, she approved it. And the FBI and the CIA were both weaponized to, as our director of CIA has said, accelerate this hoax against then candidate and former President Trump. To answer the heart of your question, the president wants to see justice served, and he trusts the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to implement that justice and hold these people accountable.
One more question, briefly,
Sure.
if I may, on a totally different topic. There's been legislation reintroduced in the House and Senate on designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. The Muslim Brotherhood is considered by many to be the fountainhead of Sunni Islamic supremacism from which Hamas and other groups have spawned, with a nexus to domestic organizations as well. Does the president support designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization?
Frankly, I'm not sure because I haven't talked to him, and I would never want to get ahead of the National Security Council on specific designations. It sounds like something this administration would support, but we can get a firm answer for you. How's that?
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Jennifer, go ahead. Eager beaver today.
How much of the East Wing will be torn down? The entire East Wing or just parts of it?
So the East Wing is going to be modernized. The necessary construction will take place. And for those who are housed in the East Wing, including the Office of the First Lady, the White House Military Office, the White House Visitors Offices, those offices will be temporarily relocated while the East Wing is being modernized.
And then on Israel-Gaza, there are some reports that negotiations with Hamas might not be continuing. Did you get any updates from Steve Witkoff on that?
I did. Special Envoy Witkoff is actively talking with our counterparts in Israel about that, and he wants to give some grace to the president so he can fully brief the president on what he's learning on the ground in both Israel and Gaza. But the president put out a very strong statement on Truth Social this morning, which I'm sure you saw, and he said the quickest way to end this entire conflict, the humanitarian crisis that we've seen, and the crisis in Israel that, of course, started on October 7th when Hamas brutally kidnapped and raped innocent Israelis, that terrible terrorist attack, is for Hamas to surrender, to release all of the hostages, and to end this conflict. And that's what the president wants to see. He's made that very clear. But the special envoy will be in Gaza tomorrow, as I shared with you previously. Josh.
Can you give us a little more clarity on the tariff timing? You said that the reciprocals will take effect tomorrow.
Yes.
Does that include the new auto rates, for instance, on Japan, Korea, the EU? Is this all coming effective tomorrow?
So some of the countries you just mentioned, Japan, South Korea, they have bespoke trade deals that the president cut, which, just to backtrack for a second, Josh, we promised that the president would negotiate with countries all around the world to cut tailor-made trade deals depending on those countries' challenges, how badly they've ripped off the United States of America and our manufacturing industry and our workforce in the past. And he has done that. Of our 18 major trading partners, 2/3 of those trading partners have a deal. We've sent out 17 letters to countries around the world. And the rest of those countries that either do not have a deal or have a letter, they will be hearing from this administration by the midnight deadline tonight. So yes, tomorrow, August 1st, the reciprocal rates will be going into effect. If more deals are cut between now and midnight, I will never count out the president. You've seen him do it before. He cut 3 deals in one day very recently. So we'll see what happens. I do know foreign leaders are ringing his phone, realizing this deadline is a real thing for them tomorrow, and they're bringing offers to the table.
We were reporting that the president wants to meet David Solomon of Goldman Sachs today. Can you say what they'll discuss, if anything, in that meeting?
I won't discuss the president's private meetings from this podium, and it hasn't taken place yet unless he gives me liberty to do so.
And finally, have you talked with the president about his position on the stock trading ban bill before Congress? He obviously had pretty loaded comments about Senator Hawley. There's some reporting that they've since spoken. What is his position on the current status of that bill?
The president has spoken to Senator Hawley, who called him, and the president took that call. As the president said in the Roosevelt Room yesterday, conceptually, he of course supports the idea of ensuring that members of Congress and United States senators who are here for public service cannot enrich themselves. And the reason that this idea to put a ban on stock trading for members of Congress is even a thing is because of Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she is rightfully criticized because she makes, I think, $174,000 a year, yet she has a net worth of approximately $413 million. In 2024, Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio, this was a fascinating statistic to me, grew 70% in 1 year in 2024, and her portfolio outperformed every single large hedge fund in that same year, and even more than doubled the returns of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. So I think the president stands with the American people on this. He doesn't want to see people like Nancy Pelosi enriching themselves off of public service and ripping off their constituents in the process. As for the mechanics of the legislation and how it will move forward, the White House continues to be in discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill. Emily, in a new seat today.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about this report that the president wants to host a G20 meeting at Trump Durrell. How is he going to do that, considering all the preparations that have been going on in South Africa? And also, would that be seen as his businesses possibly profiting from hosting this kind of meeting?
I would reject that premise entirely. We have announcements and details forthcoming on the G20, but my understanding is no firm announcement is ready to be made at this time. I did see the report, but we're not in a place to confirm it just yet.
Michelle, just on the tariffs, what are the logistics for imposing those? Does the president have to sign an executive order tonight? What's the timing of that?
Yes, and he will be signing an executive order at some point this afternoon or later this evening. And as always, we'll keep you posted when that happens, and it will be released from our office.
And there's some of these countries that have they all had contact with U.S. officials, or are there some countries that are going to get letters that have had no opportunity to negotiate with the United States?
Well, there's a lot of countries that I know have reached out. I believe it's upwards of 200 countries around the world have reached out to the trade and tariff team. Of course, as I said previously and the president said, we're going to prioritize our key trading partners, which we have done. Like I said, of the 18, 2/3 of those we have cut these tailor-made deals with. But I do know that the trade team has been working around the clock to try to be in correspondence with as many countries as possible. But if they haven't heard from us yet, they will in the form of a letter or an executive order by midnight tonight. We'll go to the back. Sure, go ahead. In the back left.
Thank you.
Amanda, yes.
Thank you very much. I have a question ask about the U.S.
Amanda, you can go ahead.
U.S. and South Korea tariff negotiations. At the tariff negotiation between South Korea and the United States concluded yesterday. President Trump stated on his SNS, Truth Social, that he would announce the specific details of the investment in the United States at the South Korea-United States summit in 2 weeks. My question is this tariff negotiation a final agreement, or is further negotiation necessary?
Well, yes, as you know, the president met with representatives of the Republic of South Korea here at the White House yesterday, and they did, in fact, reach a deal. And South Korea will pay a 15% tariff rate, including 15% on autos, while providing historic market access to American goods like autos and rice. Korea will purchase $100 billion in American energy by 2028. And the centerpiece of this deal is that South Korea has agreed to invest $350 billion at the president's direction to revitalize American industry. 90% of those profits will go to the United States government to help pay down our debt and for other matters at the president's choosing. So it was a very successful meeting yesterday.
When it's set up the further U.S.-South Korea summit day?
I'll get you something on that. I don't have it at my fingertips. Okay. Amanda.
Thank you, Caroline. There are a number of congressional Republicans who have raised the alarm about the fact that roughly 80% of pharmaceuticals are either manufactured or their precursors are manufactured in either China or India. There are some pieces of legislation, some recommendations, which include either onshoring, nearshoring, or friendshoring, those components of that. Do you know if the president intends to throw the weight of the executive behind that?
I don't have any updates for you at this time. I do have an update on our EU trade deal. I stand corrected. It's not $60 billion in investments. It's $600 billion in investments. I want to make that very clear. And I personally watched the president behind closed doors with the European president in Scotland negotiating this deal. And he got the most juice out of that squeeze that he could. And he was constantly looking out for America's interests. So I just wanted to clarify that one point. Deanna.
Thanks, Caroline. For the countries that don't have a deal yet, should we be looking at the April 2nd chart at all? Or is he negotiating and talking about having a set tariff rate, 10%, 20%?
Those discussions are taking place with the trade team today, and again, we'll provide further guidance with that executive order once it is signed, and the answer to that question will be in that executive order.
Is he looking to provide any more extensions today after his phone call with Mexico? Is there any other conversations like that?
I do know that other foreign leaders around the world have reached out, and if the president decides to share the conclusions of those calls with all of you, he will do so himself. But I do want to reiterate what the president said about Mexico. Mexico is still paying tariffs. They're paying a 25% tariff on fentanyl, 25% tariff on cars, a 50% tariff on steel, aluminum, and copper. And additionally, Mexico has agreed to immediately terminate its non-tariff trade barriers, of which there are many. And as the president said, we will continue to talk to Mexico over the next 90 days with the goal of signing a larger trade deal. The key to this, again, is Mexico has agreed to terminate those non-tariff barriers and to continue to work with us in good faith. Mexico is a very unique situation of all the other countries around the world because, of course, we share our southern border with Mexico, which we've seen an increase in cooperation between Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum and our administration on clamping down on drug trafficking and human trafficking at the southern border. We appreciate those efforts and will continue to work in good faith and to continue to have these trade discussions as well. Joey.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Just clarifying on a previous question. President Trump has indicated he's been looking at either 15% or 20% baseline universal tariff. Has he landed on one of those yet?
I won't get ahead of the president on that baseline announcement.
And then secondly, what did Treasury Secretary Bassett mean yesterday when he called the new Trump accounts for newborns a, quote, backdoor to privatizing Social Security? Does the administration view this new Trump accounts as a way to, in the long term, perhaps privatize Social Security?
What the Secretary of Treasury was saying and what this administration believes is that these Trump newborn accounts, which is an incredibly creative and great provision that was in the One Big Beautiful Bill for newborn babies and families and future generations of Americans, will help supplement, not substitute, Social Security. The Trump administration is wholeheartedly committed to protecting Social Security. The president did it in his first term. He's doing it again in this term. But these newborn accounts are another revenue stream for young people to watch their money grow throughout their lives and to one day be able to access those funds so they can hopefully build a home and live the American dream. Jake.
Just one follow-up on tariffs and then one not. Is the president at all considering extending the August 12th China deadline at all? Is that in consideration?
So, look, on China, you heard from the president on Air Force One when we were returning from Scotland. You've heard from the Treasury Secretary as well, Ambassador Jameson Greer. They just spent 2 days in Geneva for their third round of talks with China. And the current policy, the current trade program that we have going with China right now, as it stands, will decrease our deficit by $5 billion this year. So we are moving in the right direction when it comes to China. And Secretary Besson and Ambassador Greer continue to be in direct communication with our Chinese counterparts.
Is it an extension on the table potentially from the August 12th deadline as it stands?
I don't think so, but I'll let the Secretary of Treasury speak on that because he's leading these negotiations. Reagan, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. There's growing frustration that more of Trump's nominees haven't been confirmed. Why does the president think Senate Republicans are so behind, and has he had any further conversations with Leader Thune about it?
The president has had many conversations with his friends in the United States Senate about advancing his nominees, his judicial nominees through this process. It is critical that we get these good attorneys in these positions so that we can end the weaponization of justice, so we can have true law and order in our country. It's unfortunate the Democrats are playing political games, but the president has made it clear to Senate Republicans they need to do everything in their power to advance the president's nominees as well. Kelly, go ahead.
Caroline, thank you. 2 questions real quickly.
Sure.
Nigeria. Congressman Chris Smith, Republican from New Jersey, is calling upon the President of the United States to do something in terms of imposing perhaps sanctions on Nigeria for the persecution of Christians living in the northern part of Nigeria by radical Islamic groups. Has he contacted the President yet? And do you know if there's any action that the President will take?
I'm not tracking a call between the president and the head of Nigeria. I know the president wholeheartedly condemns the persecution of Christians or, frankly, of people of any faith all over the world, but I don't have any updates for you in terms of sanctions in this part of the world.
My second question, Caroline, deals with immigration here in America. As you know, a lot of deportation has been going on. ICE has been going after violent criminals that are here illegally, and rightly so. In the midst of that, there are some evangelical pastors who are stating that it may have gone to a point of being indiscriminate and actually getting innocent people, like members of the clergy. Has the president and has ICE looked at that to see how they can actually go after those violent criminals, but also make sure that members of the clergy are still not being deported?
Well, look, the administration has always maintained the position that anyone who illegally crosses our nation's borders is subject to deportation. That's just the law of the land, and we must be a nation that enforces our laws. But the priority from ICE, of course, is to deport, detain, arrest, and remove violent illegal aliens and criminals from our country. And they have been doing that at the rate of thousands of illegal violent criminals every single week, especially in Democrat-run sanctuary cities where these illegal violent criminals have been given a safe haven and have essentially been immune from our nation's laws under the previous administration. That's not happening anymore because of this president and Secretary Noem in the Department of Homeland Security. And we are going to be a nation of laws. And as we've said repeatedly, if you came here illegally, you are subject to deportation. But the priority are those public safety threats that we must remove from our communities.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Two questions. So what Hamas hardens its position and Israel provides aid? Do you have any new information on the hostages that need aid too? And second question, we heard President Trump criticize President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer for their statement about recognizing a Palestinian state. What is the president's position on recognizing a Palestinian state, and will he recognize Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria?
I can answer both of those questions for you. On the second question about a Palestinian state, the president expressed his displeasure and his disagreement with the leaders of France, the United Kingdom, and Canada. He feels as though that's rewarding Hamas at a time where Hamas is the true impediment to a ceasefire and to the release of all of the hostages. So to your first question, the president wants to see all of the hostages released. He cares deeply about this. He has met with many of the former hostages, many of the families of those who have loved ones who are still being held hostage in Gaza. I have met with them too. It is absolutely devastating what these poor people have been through, and the president is always thinking about them, and that's why he's designated his special envoy Steve Witkoff, who's doing a tremendous job to release the hostages and to end this conflict. But the president has always said the last remaining hostages, now there are 20 living hostages in Gaza, will always be the hardest because Hamas is unfortunately using these innocent people as bargaining chips. But nevertheless, we are committed to seeing this come to an end. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Caroline. Part of the settlement with Brown prohibits it from performing transgender procedures or prescribing hormone puberty blockers, that type of thing. Will eliminating these types of procedures be a priority for the Trump administration in negotiations with other universities?
I can tell you that ending the chemical castration of children in our country is a priority of this administration. We've talked to many of these universities about it, but the president has also taken very strong action to cut off the funding for any medical institution in this country that provides those barbaric procedures. The Brown University agreement, since you brought it up, is yet another win to root out anti-Semitic behavior on our nation's college campuses and unlawful racial discrimination. Brown has agreed to no longer allow unlawful racial discrimination in admissions or university programming. They have agreed to provide access to all relevant data and information to rigorously assess compliance with its commitment to merit-based admissions, and they will pay $50 million over 10 years to state workforce development organizations that comply with anti-discrimination laws, supporting regional economic growth and career opportunities. Brown will also adopt the definitions of male and female from President Trump's executive order, defending women and gender ideology extremism for women's sports, programming, facilities, and housing. Brown will no longer perform gender reassignment surgeries on minors or prescribe them puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. And Brown will take steps to improve the campus climate for Jewish students and combat anti-Semitism on their campus. This is yet another huge win for American students and for those who love our country and want to abide by our country's laws. On the topic of defending women from gender ideology extremism and helping women's sports, the president will be signing an executive order at 4 o'clock today with some very famous professional athletes whom I'm sure you all know. And that executive order will be focused on strengthening athletics in our country and making America healthy again. And we are going to re-implement the presidential fitness test in America's schools, which is, I think, something all Americans can get behind. So you'll hear from the president in 2 hours, and we will see you all there. Thank you.
All right, 2 minutes before the top of the hour. Karoline Leavitt just wrapping up that White House press briefing. Thanks so much for streaming in for that. Also, to Caroline's point, a little bit later, that's at 4 o'clock Eastern when the president will hold that event. 3:30 will start at that time, and we'll see some of these professional athletes, both current and past. Looking forward to you joining us a little bit later. In the meantime, before we end our broadcast, we'd love to introduce you to All Family Pharmacy pharmacist David McCary. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much for having me again. I greatly appreciate that.
Of course, of course. So a lot of people out there are dealing with that brain fog, low energy, fatigue that just won't go away. And let's be honest, who doesn't want to be sharp, energized, and age well? So today, let's dig into NAD+. First, we'll start with the basics. What exactly is NAD+, and why are so many biohackers, doctors, and wellness experts calling it a breakthrough for energy, aging, and overall health?
Great question. So basically, NAD+ is a coenzyme that's already naturally in your body. It's essential for turning food into energy in basic layman's terms. And obviously, you know, all of our bodies, we need fuel, we need energy. So being a coenzyme, it breaks down what you eat, what you drink, hopefully it's healthy, in order to maintain and have the energy that your body needs to utilize that. Because you can take supplements, you can take everything. If it doesn't break down and metabolize, it's not going to do what it's supposed to do.
So yeah, that's what we're hearing, that NAD+ levels actually drop as we age. So what causes the decline? How much or how does it affect things like energy, brain fog, and the metabolism, though, specifically?
It's actually quite simple. If you look at your body, just like anything else that we have in this world, as time goes on, things start to deteriorate, things start to break down. Our bodies are naturally made up of all different cells. Those cells will age and not function properly as a youthful cell would be. This product, NAD+, actually helps to regenerate, if you will, for lack of a better word, regenerate and come back with healthier, younger, stronger cells in your body to do and be more productive and more active what it needs to do as an enzyme to help, you know, the body function the way it should. So it helps actually to bring on healthier cells.
And then some people call it the fountain of youth molecule. So what's the science behind that too?
The reason why, because as you can imagine, when things are breaking down in the aging process, things slow down, things don't work properly, you don't have the energy, you don't function like you should. So by taking this, it actually helps the body to, you know, have the youthful, the younger cells in order to bring back the energy that it needs to be able to focus better. So your body naturally, you know, feels like it has that youthfulness. Now, I don't want to say that, you know, the nickname, the fountain of youth, and that's wonderful to say. It doesn't reverse, unfortunately, doesn't reverse the aging process. What it does do is it helps people to age better.
Well, that's always
and that's
good.
The key to remember.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, you guys you guys have NAD+, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, so many medications, more than 200 essential medications and antibiotics. So it's quite the array of choices there. So is NAD+ safe to take long term, and is it just for anti-aging, or can younger people benefit from it too?
No, everybody can benefit from it. And if you look at the reasoning behind that, younger people, even though they have younger bodies, they don't always sleep the amount that they need. They're not always eating properly. You know, they're stressed out, you know, doing the things that they have to do as younger people. So they're going to benefit from that. Even though their cells in their bodies are certainly younger and healthier than an elderly person, they still need to be able to take this so they could function better properly, their body, the energy. Because again, remember the concept, it's a coenzyme. So you still need to, you know, whatever you're eating and everything, things have to break down in order for it to work, even if you're a younger person. So again, it just helps even younger people, elderly, to help the aging process properly and to age better.
Okay, so then most importantly, for someone ready to start biohacking and trying NAD+, where can they get it safely, and do they need a prescription as well?
Well, we do have physicians here on board, and the reason why we do that, ours is pharmacy grade, and which means that it has a much, much higher bioavailability for absorption within the body. And it's also done by injection. At this point, that's what we're focusing in on now, is the injection. So therefore, it does require a physician. But we make everything so easy and so simple here at All Family Pharmacy in order to help all of our patients to be able to have access to this. And of course, you can order all this online here at allfamilypharmacy.com.
And definitely go to /RSBN. I know there's an RSBN 10 promo code for 10% off, and I hear it's pretty simple. It's you look at the medications online, then a doctor will prescribe it, and then that is a shipment to your door. I mean, it is pretty easy stuff, isn't it?
Exactly. We make it as simple and as painless as possible for all parties, for sure.
Awesome. And can you talk to us just about independent pharmacies and the fact that so many people, they would try and get ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, NAD+, methylene blue, all these different types of medications. But it seems like some doctors and some pharmacies are saying, nope, not going to happen. But with you guys, you're saying yes.
Yes. Well, thank you. And we're proud of that fact. And the reason it should be is we want people to have access and the ability to do their own treatments in the sense of, what they're looking for, what they want. And they don't have to be subjected to bureaucracy, red tape, saying, oh, this isn't covered by this, or I can't prescribe for that, I can't do this off-label. We allow people to have that ability to take care and take the matters in their own hand and to be able to treat along with the physician, of course, and other healthcare providers such as pharmacists to be able to discuss and do that. But at least they have the opportunity. We want our patients and other patients out there to be able to have that option.
Always good to have that option there. All Family Pharmacist David McCary, thank you again for joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here. And again, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And it's a pleasure.
Thank you again, sir. Thank you for the explanation on NAD+.
Thank you.
Definitely. So if you want to give this a try, all you have to do is go to allfamilypharmacy.com, as Mr. McCary was saying, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use that RSBN 10 promo code. They also just cut prices on ivermectin and mebendazole by 25%. And with the code, that's 10%. So you're saving that extra 10%. That's up to 35% off all of those medications people are asking for. So allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You see the code there. Great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Thank you to all of our sponsors. We'll be thanking all of you in our next broadcast, which is starting in about an hour and a half from now, 3:30 Eastern. We'll see you again right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.